I'm so thrilled, Maria, that we have an opportunity to have this fireside session. I just want to say a few words at College Futures, and Eloy spoke to it this morning, which is, we think about our strategy fundamentally about learners, and the foundation itself has had a long history and commitment to making our current public systems, making sure that they work for everyone and for all learners. And we've done a lot of work there, and we're proud of that work, and that's work that continues to be important. And the moment required us to be learners and say, we have to do things different. The urgency of now, the things that are in front of learners and in front of our state requires us to think differently about how do we deliver education in a more equitable, accessible, affordable way. And so it's been such a privilege, and we have so much gratitude to engage Maria as our first entrepreneur in residence to help us think about what does that transformation look like? How do we learn from others? How do we expand our networks so that we can be a place to set a table to offer different kinds of models for serving working learners? And so thank you, Maria, for joining us here and also being part of this community of partners. So I want to start off by saying we're going to think about this as beyond the blog. Some of you, we've been fortunate that Maria's been sharing her thinking and putting out a set of ideas and questions in the form of blogs on our website. And so I want to start off about you, Maria. You are someone who has a really interesting career, and I don't know very many people like you who've been inside and outside the public system, the education technology. You're a trustee. You're on the board of the Irvine Foundation, and you are someone who benefited from education. And so why these questions and the fire with which you ask these questions around the reimagining and the rethinking of education right now?
Well, first, thanks for having me, and thank you for making me the first fellow. It's been really amazing to be part of the team and just the amazing mission that College Futures has. So thank you for that. I think when I think about where the fire comes from, it's definitely from my mom. She came to the U.S. from Mexico, and she was in her 20s with a 6th grade education, right? And she had that fire in her belly that she was going to make something out of herself. And she really instilled in me 2 things that I carry with me very deeply. One is that no matter how little we had, you had to support your family and your community. And I think that community orientation is really something I've just carried from my whole life. And then the other thing is how special educational access is, right? The reason she only had a 6th grade education wasn't because she didn't love learning. It was because in Mexico, you only got free education to 6th grade, and then it was no longer available. And so if your family didn't have money to pay for it, that was the end of your journey. And so having education as a public asset is also something that I carry deeply with me. So I think that has really informed the work and how I think about it. The other is my own first generation journey. I went to 6 elementary schools, and I used to think that was kind of a bad thing. I wish I had little friends that I had for like the whole of elementary school. But now I realize that that's the source of my resilience and strength. Like I'm now able to be so adaptable because I had that experience, and I realized at a young age that if something changed or that I had to start over with a new school, new friends, new environment, that I was going to survive and be okay, right? And so that really informs the work. And I think about how do we get better? How do we change? That's just been, again, also ingrained for me since a child. And then finally, I will say one of the things that really transformed my thinking was going to business school. I went to Stanford Business School, and they had this series called View from the Top. And View from the Top was basically a set of seminars where CEOs and other change leaders came and spoke to the students about their journey. And it was the first time in my life, because as a first-gen college student, I was like, I want a job so I can pay rent. That was the first priority. And it was the first time that I heard people be like, I'm going to transform the world. And I was like, what, you can do that? You're allowed to think that way? And why shouldn't we all think that way? But that is not what we're taught early on. And so I learned that it's like, well, if those guys can do it, why can't I think that way? And so since then, I decided to spend my career impacting education and making it as accessible and as affordable to as many people as possible.
Thank you. Thank you. It's just always very powerful to remember like the things that root us and, really ground us, for this work. One of the first things that was really exciting in the blogs that you started to share with us and with the field are a set of assumptions we have about what the educational experience is. Time, where learning happens, what value and what quality is. And so I want to pull on that theme. And one in particular is this question around quality, and so tied to a campus experience of living on campus. And it's a hard one. We all kind of hold on to that for some of us because it was transformational. But it's also, it can be problematic. So you really push on that question, on these questions of assumptions. So I wanted to start off with that one.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, I run into a lot. And I get it. A lot of people had this a lot of leadership had the residential experience. And so I'll hear, well, online, is that quality? There's always this like implicit, really explicit bias that like it's somehow not real if it's not a residential experience. And what you're really saying, that is, if you don't have the privilege and time and money to have that experience, then you don't get to have a real quality education. And that's just not fair, right? There's so many people, as you've seen the whole morning, that are hungry, want a degree, and are not, either don't want to or cannot go live at a residential campus. And so why are we saying that that's the only option for them, right? And I know I'm speaking to the choir because everyone here is like working on shifting that change, but I hear that from faculty a lot, and this is, by the way, from people that have like a 300-person lecture hall, and I'm like, and that's quality? let's not go there. But I just think that the more inclusive you can make it, it's not about doing away with the residential experience. It's about adding optionality, adding more options so that learners have more flexibility. And there was a story that really impacted me when I went to ASU's Starbucks graduation. So ASU has a graduation for all the Starbucks employees that are part of their degree program. And the graduates get up and talk about their experience. And one of them said, she, in the last 5 years, she had moved to 5 states, and Starbucks was always at that new location, and she could keep going with her ASU degree. And that was amazing. And there's no way that would be possible with only a residential experience. So I think we can hopefully live in a both-and situation, and also create policies that allow someone like that to be able to live their life in their different life circumstances and still have access to high quality learning.
And this is a very much an emerging issue, one where we're all trying to wrap our heads around what is the nature of teaching and learning and these experiences really are. And I know I can't. It's moving so quickly, but there is opportunity. And that's what I want to ask you about, Maria, which is, one of the things you talk about in your last blog is these 4 critical shifts that have to happen. We actually have to have policy that follows this opportunity in lifelong learning, specifically financial aid, learning recognition. We need to get comfortable and use technology and this promise of short-term credentials. Like, how would we stack them up? But what I want to ask you is about this question of, with respect to recognizing that learning happens in many places, and learning recognition, because again, that's one that there's the beginnings of that happening. But why do you think that's such an important kind of critical piece that can be transformational?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of digitally enhanced education, so I'm just going to throw that out there. But Eloy talked about this, right? You said he didn't go to school for 7 years after graduating, but you did. You were in the Army. And you were working, and all those skills established over those years somehow don't count, and you have to start over as if you have no skills, no work experience, no competencies, right? So I really think that that's a critical component for equity, is honoring and acknowledging the amazing skills and experiences people bring, regardless of where they are in life, and counting that as part of their skills and experiences for college and for post-secondary credentials. So that's just, there's competency-based education, but it's so hard. You have to like jump through hoops to be able to get that accredited. And it's like, why? If someone already, like, why do we force people to start over, making it harder, longer, more expensive to finish their degree when they already may have maybe half the skills, right? And can really speed that time to degree. So to me, that's one of the critical components. You know, just reminded of a woman who I just met last week, and she is a fairly traditional learner. You know, she started right after high school at a Cal State, but now 4 years later, she's working full time, and she still had a couple classes to go. And she wants to be a physician's assistant. Her name is Hannah. And Hannah's like, you know, I have to finish anatomy, but I can't go to campus anymore. I need it to be asynchronous. I need it to be in my own time. And she's like, I don't understand why people don't think that my asynchronous course that I had to take from I can't even remember the institution, but she found one in Pennsylvania that offered it for her because her local school wouldn't offer that for her, which means she couldn't finish her degree. And she was like, of course I want to learn anatomy. I want to be a physician's assistant. Like, I'm going to study, I'm going to learn. I have the discipline. Why can't I do this? And that just really struck me as like listening to learners. I mean, it's about working adults, but also our students are working adults, even the younger ones. Many of them are working adults. Many of them have a lot of, full-time work sometimes. And so that's why I think the more you can speed up, hey, if people know something, let's give them credit and help them move faster.
Question on my mind is the rise of AI. Because as we think about the workforce of the future, it's a big question mark. What impacts will it have? How significant will it be? And if we want folks to be lifelong learners, how do we prepare them for potential significant disruption? Or, my thoughts go to like, we have to teach people to learn skills quickly.
And be to adapt. And I don't think that's the training I got when I went through my training in education. I'm sure I picked up skills to learn, but it feels like AI has the potential of really disrupting entire industries in California and throughout the world. And also as a father of a 14-year-old, I'm thinking about like, how do you prepare the next generation to whatever future is coming? So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on how our institutions can adapt given that rise in technology?
Yeah. No, that's definitely something everyone's talking about right now. And I think there's a couple of really important things that you said. One, right, is that I think we have to shift from this one-time transactional view of education to a lifetime of learning. I mean, I think Rebecca talked about 5 careers. Even in this room, like how many people are still in the same job they're in from when they graduated from college? And so this idea that you're going to just have one degree and you're going to be fine, I think is outdated. I think we have to create an ability for people to keep learning across their lifetime, whether it's because of AI or just because they want to shift jobs or because they want to grow in their career or they want a promotion or whatever that reason is, right? Assuming that you're going to cram everything into a short one-size-fits-all credential just doesn't make sense. So I think that's a big component part of that. And I think what AI allows you to do is to there's 2 kind of design features of AI that I think have not been exploited by education at all. One is affordable scale. So you can do things at scale with AI that you could never do before. Think 24/7 chatbots, right? If you have an advising question and it's after 8 to 5 p.m., now you can maybe have an AI chat that you can to right away about the issue because you're studying at midnight because that's when you have time. And also the personalization, mass personalization. So with AI, and I think this is very nascent, but you could imagine courses, and people are developing these courses now where the AI can basically personalize to that subject, to your interests, to where you're at, recognize, well, maybe you're missing a concept from like 3 years ago. So we're going to go back to that concept so you can figure that out. You can't do that actually in an in-person giant course. There's no way to personalize it, mass personalization at that level. And so I actually think that AI could be a real force to provide a lot more equitable access to education because of the personalization, but that requires intentional design. Right? And that requires people in the room engaging that are interested in a public asset of education. If it's only players that are interested in profit or in big tech, we're probably not going to get the most equitable educational outcomes. And so I think it's almost a must for people in this room, for us to be the ones working with our learners to design what the future looks like.
Hi, Maria. Actually, I was just prompted by the point you made earlier about scale. And I wanted to go back to your time at ASU. Perhaps you still are associated with it. I think one of the reasons that ASU and Michael Crow has been as effective as he has, many reasons, but one of them is scale. They've been able to do so many things because they've just used this idea of saying we're going to expand. So if you look at the ASU model, and I'm not as familiar with it, obviously, is that it has appeal to multiple types of learners. You want the traditional college-going frat person who wants the Saturday football games and the partying and all that. ASU gives you that. You want the working student, gives you that. It gives you the part-time student. So it's been able to do this because of the fact. Now, that level of differentiation and complexity is harder to do for institutions that are constrained by not being able to scale. So my question, I guess, to you is, to put you a little bit on the spot, if you could redesign the Cal State University system, 450,000 students, probably twice the size of ASU, right? Maybe more. If you could redesign the Cal State system in order to do exactly that, provide the affordability, personalization, multiple learners, and all the things we spoke about, how would you go about doing it?
I'll give just one thought, which is to say, I think we're going to have to start funding differently. And what I mean by that is in a digital scale institution, it could be $2 million to create a really amazing adaptive biology course. That only works if you're using across thousands of students, which you have at Cal State. But if it's for one biology course at one Cal State for 100 students, you're never going to spend that money. We don't have that money, but you actually do have that money at scale. So we're going to have to start thinking differently about how we fund this innovation at a more scaled level, which our public institutions have, by the way, in California. We just aren't funded in that way, and we don't think about our innovation in that way. And so that's just a mindset shift I think that needs to happen in California. I would also say that what you can do once you have the digital infrastructure also completely changes things. So ASU has something called ASU Local, and they were able to, because of the online degrees, we were able to create a hybrid program in Yuma, Arizona, where students were like, I don't want to leave my family and community, and Tempe's 2 hours away. And any other major city is like 2 hours away. And that was not possible. And so now there's like 100 students in their community learning, working together with coaches, workforce integrated. That was not with 150 degrees available to them. That was not possible without technology.
Well, there's that. First, just a round of applause for Maria. Thank you so much for the time and for all of you for your questions.